things you can do to help your children pass their driving test faster. Hi, my name's Louisa. I work for these guys, My Four Wheels, but I'm also a trained life coach. So what can you do to help your kids? Well, there's actually loads. So let's get into it. One of the first things you can do to help them is get them to start thinking like a driver and not as a passenger. Now, these could include games such as mini sat-nav, where they tell you where to go. Maybe they're following the sat-nav, which is another really good skill that they are going to need. They say change lane here, slow down here, the light's gone to amber, slow down, all that type of thing to really guide you. So they start thinking like a driver. They start looking ahead and seeing what's happening on the road and understanding the things that they need to do. Spot the hazard, great one. Looking ahead far into the distance to see where the hazards are. Things like speed changes or hazards such as junctions, schools, pedestrians, pets. And once something becomes a habit and they're naturally spotting things, it's going to be a lot easier for them on test day because it's going to come naturally. Now, one of the other things that you can do is get them to get that theory test passed sooner rather than later, because the knowledge, the road knowledge, the actual what to do with signs, the hazard perception, everything in there is only going to benefit them when they start driving an actual car. They need to know that. They can put the two things together then, and that's really, really good. And if they are using an app for the theory test, keep them looking at that. When even after they've passed, go back into that, and then they can put together things that they're actually learning practically with what they learned theoretically, and putting those two things together will really help reinforce that knowledge there as well. Now, one of the other things to do is get them as much practice out there on the road as soon as possible. Now, the instructor will say when they are safe to go out without a dual controlled car, and at that point, please don't think that you're there to take over the job of the instructor. You're not. The best way that you can do is to help reinforce those lessons with the instructor. So try and get some feedback off them of areas they need to work on, things they need to practice, and then really, really, really concentrate on that. Your job is to help them get confidence out on the road. Now, the more time that they spend behind the wheel, the more aspects of practical driving is going to become habit. It's going to become muscle memory. They're not going to have to think about it. So when a normal driver goes out, half of the things that they do in the car, from gear changes to braking, they aren't actually consciously thinking about that. It just comes naturally. And we want to get as much of that possible before their test, because then they're not going to feel as stressed, as pressured on the test if they're doing something naturally without having to think about it. Now, one thing that you've got to understand is the best way to be with them on the car is in a calm, safe environment that's supportive, that helps build their confidence. If anyone's shouting, if it's a negative environment, it's just going to have a negative impact and it's going to hold them back. It's not actually going to help at all. So make sure it's the calmest person that they could be, and they really help boost their confidence. So constantly reinforcing what they've done right, really responding to everything, telling them where they've gone, and not constantly focusing on things that they've done wrong, but saying, yes, you did really well there. Always giving that positive reinforcement, which will help their confidence, because don't forget, more tests are failed through lack of confidence than lack of skill. So if we can build that confidence level up, we're more likely going to get a pass when they go sit that test. Now, confidence is also key at home, even when they're not driving. So keep that negative talk to an absolute minimum. Don't talk about tests in a negative way. Don't talk about stress in a negative way. Yes, nerves are normal. They have to understand that. But, high levels of anxiety, no, that's not normal, and that's not helpful either. So we want to help them in taking away some of that and just being supportive, talking about the positive outcomes of a driving test, where they're going to go, what they want to do first, so that everything surrounding the driving is positive. Because there is a lot of negatives out there, and if they're on social media, they're being fed a lot of this by people saying, I'm scared, I'm worried, and so they kind of like joining in that whole narrative. But if we can get them thinking more positive and believing in themselves and believing in their skills, they're more likely going to get a pass, and they're more likely going to pass faster. Another thing that you can do is to keep a learner journal. Now, you can go into this, they can write a diary about what they've done, how they've felt, what the positive outcomes were, what they did well, and see how far they've come. So this would be another way of positively reinforcing their learning journey. When you're constantly focusing, oh, this went wrong on the lesson, that we don't want to do that. Yes, something needs working on, fine, we'll get to that, but what went right, and building that confidence back up, because it's very easy if you've had a particularly bad or tricky lesson to really focus in and hone in on that and nothing else, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful at all to the learner. What they need to do is see, look how far you've come. Yes, at this point we hit a bit of a stumbling block, we hit a bit of a wall there, but we will get round it. But wow, look at what you've achieved here. That's what we need to focus on, because what we don't want is the lack of confidence, the lack of self-belief that's going to take us backwards. Definitely not that. So all the time building up. So please don't ever underestimate the power of confidence and self-belief in this learning journey. If your child's suffering from nerves and they have an increasing level of driving anxiety, an increasing level of worry, then this is something that needs to be discussed with the instructor, because then the instructor can maybe go backwards, baby steps, go back to where some of the nursery roots and rebuild some of that confidence. Maybe something happened out there on the road that's eroded their confidence and they're starting to worry before lessons, things like that. Well, this is what we need to do. You need to have a really open dialogue with your instructor. Another thing that you need to do is don't compare them to anybody else, even a sibling. I don't want to be using words like, oh, well, they only took this many lessons, how come you taking this many hours? You need to hurry up with your learning. It's costing me a fortune, things like that. Yes, maybe it is, but you've got to keep quiet about that, because once they start doubting themselves, doubt creeps in, and that will put them backwards. You've got to understand that. That is going to put them backwards. So as much positive reinforcement that you can give them, but never ever mentioning or comparing. It doesn't help. It's really not helpful. The next thing you can do is help them, support them at test day. Make sure they have everything ready. Double check where that provisional license is and make sure it's in a safe place. On test day, you want them to be having breakfast in the morning. If you're not going to be there, prep something for them, so they're more than likely going to eat it, because what you don't want to be doing is sitting a test when you're running on empty. Secondly, they want to be having a bottle of water. Dehydration, big killer there for concentration and focus, and easy on the caffeine. I know people may think that if they have a can of Red Bull pre-test, it's going to make them feel more alert and focused. It's not. Caffeine does amplify nerves, and that's the last thing you want, because when you've got amplified nerves, it can lead to panic, which can lead to silly mistakes that they wouldn't normally make, and then that snowballs into something bigger, and before you know it, we're on to dangerous faults and a fail. So that's it. Maybe you're not doing all the instructing, maybe you're only there as a supporting role, but as a parent, there really are lots of things you can do to help and support your child as they learn to drive, and the more support they get from you, the faster they will pass their test. So good luck, and please let me know how you get on.